Welcome back to the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. It is the second race of the Fanatec GT2 European Series here on the Temple of Speed. And what a brilliant race it is set to be after the fantastic race duel that we had yesterday. It is similar conditions to yesterday. The sun is trying to poke out a little bit more. 16.7 degrees Celsius air temperature, track temperature almost 5 more than that. And it's definitely going to be a very exciting run as we gear ourselves up ready for the start of the race. Peter Gillings is on the pit lane, on the pole position, I should say, alongside teammate Longin Steens. Gemma Scott is with him.
Peter, you had a little bit of a disaster yesterday. It's racing, but obviously hoping for better results today, starting from the front row.
Definitely hoping to rectify what we did wrong yesterday, but I have full confidence that my teammate will do a great job, and let's hope we end up on the podium. We're going to give it our best.
What happened yesterday?
Racing incident. First corner at Monza is very difficult. You arrive at a very high speed, and there was no more space, so I had to cut over the grass, and on the grass you cannot brake, and that's why I slid into the Porsche from Monza Racing.
But testament to the team, everything's fixed and ready to go.
They did a great job. We don't get the beauty prize, but the car looks good, it's fast, and ready to race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Peter Gillings having issues yesterday, but of course the difference between yesterday's race and today is that the drivers that didn't start the race yesterday will be the ones that start the race today. It's going to be an interesting one. Gemma Scott is going to give us all of the information as it happens down in pit lane. I'm Jake Sanson. Beside me is Ben Constanduros. After the race yesterday, which was full of drama, excitement and fantastic grandstand racing, I have a feeling that today is going to be just as good, if not better.
And it'll be a complete reversal of what we saw yesterday, with the cars having their pro drivers in for the first part of the session. Those cars that have pro drivers, we obviously have two different categories, the Pro-Ams and the full Ams, but we will see the pro cars disappear up the street for the first half of the race. Expect Pierre Caffer to have a healthy advantage come pit stop time. Then we'll have our mandatory pit stop. There is compensation time for those that were particularly good in yesterday's race, and then we'll get the AMs in for the second half of the race, and that is when it becomes a little bit more dramatic. Now, if we do get a safety car, all of the work of our pro drivers is done, and then it really does rely upon the performance of the AM driver to dictate the result.
Now, there's going to be an interesting dynamic coming into this one as well, because one driver we didn't get to see out on circuit yesterday was Steen Longin, the man who starts from pole position, and he's going to have all of the pressure on him in the world to go toe-to-toe with Pierre Caffer down to the first corner. If he can sustain the pressure and keep Pierre Caffer back for as long as possible, there could be a really interesting outcome here.
Yeah, son of Bert Longin, and a man who has participated in this GT2 series last year, new teammate for this year, but he knows Pierre. He's raced against him in this championship last year, and they are side by side on the front row of the grid. But there's fast guys behind. Anthony Beltoise took the victory yesterday with his teammate Henri Acide. Unfortunately, though, retired out of the GT4 races competing in. Double bubble for him this weekend.
So there we have Stefan Rossina along with Nicolas Salins. The two KTM teammates there, they're going to be battling away for position, and this could be an interesting one for the KTM brand. They obviously have two Pro-Ams in the top 6, and they have two AMs behind them. It could be very interesting to see what happens. Don't forget that Jan Krabec actually finished second overall yesterday, and he is going to be starting this time from 10th on the grid. It's going to be a tough mission for him to replicate that. And
definitely a lot better than that Q2 performance, because he was up there with the very best and was able to battle at the head of the field throughout the full 50-minute race, because he is one of a few drivers that does not have a teammate. We've got 4 drivers out there that are doing the full race. The reason for that is that Monza is not such a physical track in comparison to some of the other places that we visit, and therefore a gentleman driver can do the full 50 minutes, although he did say he was not feeling quite as fit as he wanted to be at the end of that race when he spoke to Gemma.
There is one car that will not take the start, and that is the Heavy Motors Porsche Leonardo Gorini, who is not going to be taking the start for this second race due to outlying commitments. So everybody else, though, is going to make their way around for this formation lap, and we're going to talk you through the starting grid. What a brilliant race awaits us. It is Audis 1, 2 and 3 off the grid, with the KTMs, the sole Mercedes, the sole Lamborghini and the 2 Porsches giving chase. This is going to be a very intriguing race battle, as Steen Longin and Pierre Caffer will go from the front row of the starting grid and all the way down to the Rettifilio. It's going to be a very interesting charge forward as they try to move their way and make progress. Mattia De Gusto, of course, is going to be third on the grid with Reinhard Koffler in the True Racing KTM alongside. And then Anthony Beltoise, the man who charged through to the victory yesterday, along with Stefan Rossiner on the third row of the starting grid. It's going to be very interesting to see how this kicks off.
And remember who was on our pole position yesterday? It was a Lamborghini. That Lamborghini is at the tail of the field today.
So it's Audi 1 and 2, Longin and Caffer on the front row of the grid, PK Car Sport versus LP Racing. Then Mattia De Gusto in the LP alongside Reinhard Koffler in the first of the KTMs for True Racing, fourth on the grid. Anthony Beltoise, the winner yesterday, alongside Stefan Rossiner in the number 15 True Racing KTM. And then we have the first of the AMs, Liebhauser in the Fanatec by HRT Mercedes alongside Angerhofer in the KTM. Janavicius in the sole remaining Heavy Motors Porsche. Jan Krabech, second overall yesterday, never mind in AM. And then it is Brewer versus Privitello, the two cars that ended up in dire straits on lap 1 yesterday, going from the back row of the grid this time. So this race has so much drama. Before it's even started, it looks like it's going to be a thriller.
Had a good chat with Thomas Jackemeyer, the owner of that first ever Mercedes GT2 car. Only took ownership of the car on Tuesday. Had never pedalled around the circuit, let alone in a GT car. Some racing in single-seaters. He owns a Toro Rosso Formula 1 car. But this is a very, very different beast. And we spoke about the Mercedes. You can see it there, actually. The way that it's very soft. And the reason for that is because the BOP, which obviously had to be implemented last minute, has meant that that car has to be pushed up quite high so that it doesn't get too much airflow underneath the car and create too much downforce. So it's very high in comparison to the rest, and therefore the only way to make it work, because it was understeer, is horrible understeer apparently, is to make it softer so that the front end digs in and they can get rid of that understeer. What it does mean is under braking particularly, it's quite nervous, as we saw yesterday, and the rear end is all over the place. It did, apparently, Thomas said, it was great fun. And we did see him having a lot of fun, diving down the inside of people and the car really squirming around. He was hoping for rain today because that softness of the Mercedes would have worked wonders in the wet conditions. But thankfully, it is stayed dry.
I clearly didn't do my rain dance effectively enough last night. I obviously need to consult my Witch Doctor book properly and get it done in time for next time. Sorry, Thomas. Anyway, we are going to go racing in the Fanatec GT European Series with 3 Audis in the first 3 positions. Reinhard Koffler leading the charge for KTM as we ride on board with the Fanatec by HRT Mercedes. This is Jens Liebhauser at the wheel. It looks like it's going to be an interesting start for him. Obviously, they're battling for the AM victory, and this is the car that is in pole position in the AM category as well. So quite a lot of pressure riding on that car going in. But in these 2 classes, we have great battles. And what I love about this championship as well is not only do we have inter-class battles, they are able to mix with each other quite well in the race overall too.
Because we have an AM lineup and then we have a Pro-AM lineup, expect the field to split in the first half of this race, with those Pro drivers having a good second and a half advantage over many of the AMs. But then it will all come together in the second half of the race when the AM drivers take over from the Pros and effectively have an all-AM field for the second half.
All you need is a safety car, and then it could be an absolute rout for everybody. It could be anybody's race at all to win. So this is still going to be a very open contest. 50 minutes on the clock. On the inside line is Longin, on the outside line is Pierre Caffer. We're waiting for the lights to go from red to green, and when they do, we'll be racing here in the Fanatec GT2 European Series. Away we go, and it's a cracking start from Pierre Caffer, trying to out-drag the PK Car Sport Audi, and looks like he may already have done so. Pierre Caffer hoping to get a better run to the braking zone. This is going to be tough for Steen Longin, but there's a little bit of contact, and there goes De Gusto has spun the Audi. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of contact there with the KTM that has to take avoiding action in the first corner, just a little bit too close together, and there was nothing Mattia De Gusto could do.
Mattia's going to have horrible flat-spotted tyres if he does indeed get himself back going again. That's the car he shares with Stefan Rattel, and it didn't look too much damage.
Steen Longin is in the lead. He did manage to get past Pierre Caffer again.
Wow. Confidence in the first couple of corners in his car. We've got a yellow flag flying at that first chicane, which suggests that Matteo has not got back going again, which is a real shame. Didn't seem like there was a massive amount of contact with anybody.
So Mattia De Gusto ended up tagging the KTM in the door, but I agree with you. I didn't think there was that much damage. Jan Krabech losing out there to the Porsche and losing out to the KTM as well. Has Jan Krabech got a problem developing here? This could be a bit of a difficulty for the man who finished second yesterday.
Is that Klaus Angerhofer getting past him, who shouldn't really be there? Klaus was way higher up the field, and in fact Jan Krabech fights back on that one. And yes, it is. So he hasn't had a very good start, has he, Klaus?
Yeah, indeed. So neither Jan or Klaus really having the same sort of spirited run at the start of the race that they had yesterday. Pierre Caffer settling himself in with Reinhard Koffler and Stefan Rossener in behind the two leading cars. But this is great from Steen Longin. He had a lot of pressure on him to hold Pierre Caffer at bay, and he has made a perfect opening lap. He's now going to try and keep this going all the way through to the pit stop in the hope that when he hands over to Kevin Galinsk, he's going to have a much better chance of sustaining this. But this is not going to be easy. Pierre Caffer has already got him on the brake, and now Rossener trying to go for the sister car of Reinhard Koffler, and he's going to try and outbrake into the Rettifilio. Not going to happen this time.
Yellow flag's flying, of course, so you can't overtake into turn one. Unfortunately, the Audi is parked up somewhere.
There it is.
There it is. I'm surprised that they couldn't get that going again. That's a real shame.
Well, Mattia De Gusto unfortunately out of the race then, and that is very disappointing indeed. It means that the LP Racing Audi is going no further in this one. Right, battle for third position. Rossener trying to take on Reinhard Koffler. And again, Rossener just looking for an opportunity, trying to find the gap on the inside line. Pierre Caffer just getting into the rear view mirror of Steen Longin now, who is obviously trying not to focus in on him. You've got to drive forwards, not behind you. You've got to look at what's coming, not what's been. The two Porsches dueling away. This is the Ebbe Motors of Janavicius versus Christoph Brewer, whose race is lasting a lot longer than yesterday's. He was obviously off at turn 2 of the Rettifilio. Unfortunately, with the love tap from Kevin Galinsk, the car was too damaged to continue, so Christoph Brewer has already doubled his race time. Well, he's probably, you know, massively increased it from yesterday now. It's more than double. He's on the second lap.
And he is another of those drivers that doesn't have a teammate, so he will be doing the full race in that Porsche. We didn't obviously have no real idea as to what kind of pace Christoph has. We saw the two Ebbe Motors cars yesterday, only one Ebbe Motors car today. That's with the kind of, I guess it's a bit of a throwback Martini livery, isn't it? The other one that we saw yesterday was kind of part Rothman's livery, but was missing pits and unfortunately parked up in the paddock for today's race.
Yeah, nice to see those traditional Porsche sports cars liveries on the 911s. I always feel that they do suit the 911 very well. Out of the braking zone, Caffer just taking it nice and easy behind Steen Longin. He really wants to get through and try and pull away as much as possible to give his teammate the best possible gap to come into the next stint, because that's your job as a driver, isn't it? You've got to try, get into a position where you can pull out a gap and give your teammate the best possible chance of going for the win.
Yeah, especially in these Pro-Am encounters. You have this huge pressure on your shoulders to create enough of a gap for your AM driver to be able to finish the race in a good position. Ultimately, it's the AM driver who is paying the Pro driver to be here.
Rossener almost going into the back of the sister car there of Reinhard Koffler, managing to roll off the brake just in the nick of time and go over the runoff area at the Variante della Roggia. In the background, we've got Liebhauser in front of Anthony Beltoise. Beltoise struggling to get himself up into the top 5 here.
Well, that's because all the guys ahead are Pro drivers.
Indeed. So Liebhauser, obviously, it's going to be a little bit tougher to get past. But Anthony Beltoise is doing his very best to try and work his way further forward. And the Pro-Am car of Anthony Beltoise struggling to deal with Liebhauser. Liebhauser's got himself a decent amount of pace at the moment. Here comes Pierre Caffer, trying to go the long way round now on Steen Longin. Longin is defending valiantly into the Alboreto Variante. So, of course, we all refer to it as Parabolica. Caffer's got a good run. Going to go side by side, and Pierre Caffer's going to try and draw level with Steen Longin. Longin is going to squeeze him as much as he can, but on the straight, you've got no chance of doing that, and Pierre Caffer has got the run. He's just nosed ahead at the line, but is there going to be enough of an opportunity for Steen Longin to break later into the chicane? Caffer's going to have the tighter apex. No, Pierre Caffer has got that one done. It took him a couple of laps, but he is now through into the lead.
Caffer was later on the brakes as well. He was absolutely adamant that that was going to be completed. And now, with clear track ahead of him, giving himself a couple of laps to play himself in. But Caffer is capable of doing 48 48.5, so we saw that yesterday. The best lap of the race from Koffler, 49.5 at the moment. Koffler is the third of our cars, the first of the KTMs. So I think Pierre Caffer has got another second in his pocket, and let's see what happens now he's got clear air.
Krabech has finally started to make a bit of an inroad. He dealt with Angerhofer, and he's now dealt with the Porsche of Janavicius. So he is making up for lost time, Jan Krabech. Expect to see him charge up towards the top 7. He's got to take on Christoph Brewer first, of course. So Janavicius, I'm not sure what happened to him, but he came across the line in 7th, and he's lost out to Brewer and Krabech. So I wonder if he dropped it somewhere on the lap. Here comes the move on the inside from Reinhard Koffler. Beautifully made by Reinhard Koffler on the inside there of Steen Longin. That's such a hard move to pull off into the Variante Ascari and have the confidence that A, you're going to have the space to make the apex, and B, you're not going to travel onto the right-hand curb. So a fabulous run. However, he may have made the move into second position, but he's got a drive-through penalty for causing a collision with Mattia De Gusto.
That's a very interesting decision by race control. A little bit of damage to Koffler's rear end where that contact was made, and he goes straight for the pits, decides he's going to do it right now.
I suppose it makes sense to get it out of the way as soon as possible, and then you can start to edge back towards the cars in front, but he is going to drop all the way to 10th here. I think Donovan Privitello is not quite going to catch up to him. Here comes the move from Anthony Beltoise on the inside of Jens Liebhauser. No, he has to bail out of the move. Liebhauser's going to defend, holds it. Try something different, Anthony. You can't quite make that one stick.
Yeah, and this is where a pro driver is being careful around drivers he doesn't necessarily know. Jens Liebhauser, a hotelier from Germany, but also the Ferrari Challenge World champion a couple of years ago. So he's not a slow driver in the slightest. Very, very good peddler and knows how to race in those Ferrari Challenge races. You have to get your elbows out despite the fact that they are Ferraris. And therefore he's kind of being able to place his car in the right position to make Anthony Beltoise a little bit nervous to dive down the inside.
I mean, Ferrari don't have a touring car championship, but if they
That
did,
is.
it would be called the Ferrari Challenge,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? I mean, it's a fabulous series, but there are some aggressive racing there. So Jens Liebhauser has definitely done his homework to be ready for an aggressive battle, but Anthony Beltoise is not going to be the kind of driver who'll pull a dirty move on him. He's got to be tactical about where he goes for it. Christoph Brewer has got the Porsche up to scratch, and now look, he has managed to catch up to the two of them. So Christoph Brewer finally starting to find the Porsche's ultimate pace. He's got a chance of an overall podium here.
This is all about confidence. This is all about getting the cars up into their window and getting the tyres to temperature, and then feeling like you've got something underneath you that you can start to lean on, because especially for an AM driver, the sensation on slick tyres early in the race is so unnerving. The car doesn't feel anything like it would do when it's up to temperature. And so, unlike a driver like Pierre Caffer, who will just get it by the scruff of its neck, chuck it into corners, generate the temperature, it takes the AM drivers just a little bit longer. And look at this, Anthony Beltoise under pressure, having to defend from the Porsche.
This is fascinating to see how this continues to battle. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But Caffer extending the gap now to 2.6. Longin did go fastest first sector that he has done on the previous lap, but Caffer is going faster still. 34.0 at the moment for Pierre Caffer in the first sector, stretching that gap up to 3 seconds now. But Jens Liebhauser is a cork in the bottle at the moment, isn't he? He's holding on to the position in 4th place, but it's certainly looking very tough for Beltoise to get through, and as Beltoise can't get through, Brewer is closing up, Krabech is closing up, and Janavicius is closing up as well.
Not yet seen a 48 from Pierre Caffer, but the last lap was a 49.0, so he's getting close and he's making the gap larger and larger, over half a second faster than anybody else out there. But he does have teammate Michael Doppelmayr to take over that car in the second half of the race, and as we saw from yesterday's race, Doppelmayr one of the slower of our drivers, and therefore will need a nice big lead if he fancies standing on the podium today.
So a fascinating situation still playing out at the moment, but this is all going to come down to the composure and the calm attitude of Jens Liebhauser. He cannot afford to get into hot water here. He's just got to keep the focus. hold the line as they go down to the first corner. He's going to want to hold that inside line. This is a good run from Longin. He's held it fairly close to Pierre Caffer. 3.5 seconds keeps that PK Car Sport Audi in the hunt for the victory.
Well, hang on, that's 1 second faster Caffer over Longin on that last lap alone. So
it was actually, to be fair.
The wick has been turned up by Pierre Caffer now.
But this is now Pierre Caffer having to figure out how much of a gap he needs to be comfortable
Well, he needs about
at the pit stop.
He needs about 25 seconds for Michael Doppelmayr to win, I think. At least.
It is going to be tricky. It is going to be very tricky, and Longin knows that, so he's stepped up and set his best lap on the last lap as well. The 1:49.4, still a very good time indeed from Longin.
And to be fair, we actually don't really know. We know how good Steen can be because we've seen him last year, but his new teammate Peter Gidlick, we don't actually know what kind of pace he's got, because that one car obviously had contact on lap 1 of yesterday. So how good is he in comparison to the other AMs that he'll be eventually fighting with? Stefan Racina will be handing over to Nicholas Salins. Salins isn't too bad as a driver either. And then Lieberhauser, who is in 4th, there he is in the Mercedes, handing over to Thomas Jackemeyer. So we know Anthony Beltoise's teammate, Henry Hassid, is pretty good. We saw him as our champion last year, so expect that Audi to certainly be able to hold pace with the AMs ahead of him. But I think Henry will be looking at Anthony Beltoise to clear this Mercedes, but it does seem as though the Mercedes, obviously being new to the championship, is quite different in its performance around this circuit than others, hence why they decided to jack it up and make it high so that it didn't have as much downforce, but it does look like it's very strong along the straights, and therefore Beltoise in the Audi is struggling to get into the braking zones alongside him.
So let's see what is going to transpire in this 4th place battle. We've got 5 cars very close to each other down to the braking zone. Fanatec by HRT leads the AM Cup at the moment, but Liebhauser doesn't just want to win the AM Cup, he also wants to keep Anthony Beltoise at bay as long as possible. Brewer, Glebech and Janovicius. The fastest first sector of the entire race came from us on the last lap. Guess who set it? No, you're wrong. It's Mantas Janovicius in the Porsche. The Heavy Motors car just did a 33.6 in the first sector.
Yeah, but hang on, isn't he at the back of a 5-car tray?
He is
so
indeed.
He doesn't have to punch any air out of the way at all. He's got a beautiful slipstream.
So Jens Liebhauser still holding on in 4th position overall, leading the AM category. Anthony Beltoise trying to be as patient as possible, but when you're trying to force the issue and work your way forward, you've obviously got to try and be very careful and very tactical about where you make the move. Down the straight, underneath the Monzanapolis banking, up towards the Variante Ascari once again. Fastest 2nd sector of the entire race for Pierre Caffer up front, 37.225 for him. Steen Longin, not that far off it, 37.3. So still within about 5 seconds at the moment. But obviously, come the pit stops, that's when things can get a little bit changeable, and the pit stop window is about to open. So Jens Liebhauser, the travel of the car into the Variante Alboreto, or the Parabolica, as the car goes so fast and then slams on the brakes so hard. That's the thing, these cars have a lot more power than the GT3s, but they have nowhere near the same aero, so it makes it very tricky to stop these cars on a circuit like Monza. You go in a straight line very quickly, but then braking, look at that. You're effectively having to brake it at 150 meter board.
Interestingly, that in the GT4s and in GT3s, we see the cars going down that main straight in the middle of the road to avoid the bumps on the left-hand side, but in GT2 here, they don't seem to be too bothered by those bumps in the braking zone.
So car 15, that is Stefan Rossiner, is under investigation for cutting turns 1 and 2 and gaining an advantage. We didn't see where that happened, but...
Well, it happened at turn 1 and 2.
Well, we didn't see which lap it happened,
No.
I should say. We didn't see where... we were looking at a different car at a different time. So I don't know whether it was on the last lap or whether it was a couple of laps before, but Stefan Rossiner is under investigation now, and that's a real concern, because obviously if they have gained an advantage, a penalty coming their way, that's a chance of a podium really starting to slip.
He's not gaining an advantage, though, in terms of positions, because he's been in 3rd for most of this race, hasn't he? So unless it was very, very early on, or race controller just decided that he went faster through that first sector than ever before.
You might have a point there, Ben. I wonder if Rossiner was the KTM that went over the first Rettifilio chicane on the opening lap and therefore may have gained a position because of that. So that's possibly why, as Matas Janovicius drifts a little bit wide. He had the slipstream of the cars in front before to set that purple first sector, but he certainly hasn't got it now because the 4 cars in front of him have started to pull clear.
And Beltoise actually cannot do anything about this Mercedes. He's a lot better in the corners, he's later on the brakes, but once the Mercedes stretches its legs down this main straight, the Audi isn't able to get close enough to make a move. I think the only way that Beltoise is going to do this at the moment, sitting behind the Mercedes, is losing him the race. He needs to be a lot more aggressive in the braking zones if he can, if he's close enough, and really just chuck it down, almost karting style block pass, compromise Lieberhauser, and then try and stay ahead into the next kind of main straight, because the Mercedes looks so strong, even on pickup out of the turns. At this stage of the race, the car looks really planted, and it's very strong down the straights.
Stable under brakes for Jens Liebhauser, almost a puff of grass, but just about managed to keep it off there. And this is all you have to do at this point, is just try and keep your combatant in your mirrors, try not to get phased by the fact that he's starting to pop out to the right, to the left. You've got to just keep it nice and focused. Again, look, good tactics from Beltoise, but this is all about Jens Liebhauser not getting phased. I don't care whether you go to my right or to my left, I'm going to hold this car exactly where I need it to be. I can defend wherever I choose to go.
He's not having to defend. The car's so strong down the straights, he doesn't even really need to put it off the racing line.
It's about slowing it down and holding it through the corners, isn't it? Because this car does travel a little bit more lackadaisical than the Audi. See, this is where the Audi gets close,
yeah,
then back on the throttle, away goes the Merc.
Yeah, exactly.
It looked like Jan Krabech went a little bit wide in the Variante Ascari in the background there. He's managed to save it without losing too much time.
So they haven't given Rosina a 5-second penalty for skipping across that turn 1-2 chicane. So his pit stop will be a little bit longer. There's lots of different times for the pit stops. Once we get to those pit stops, I'll let you know, but not one single car will really have the same pit stop window as the rest, due to effectively success ballast, if you like.
So essentially it's a 2-minute pit stop plus success, and that's obviously what will come into effect when the pit stops open up. Jens Liebhauser and Anthony Beltoise. This battle just keeps on going on and on between these two. It's irresistible to watch as Liebhauser has more speed on the straights and on the fast Curva Grande, but in the corners, Anthony Beltoise definitely has the car to match him. So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see if a mistake comes from Liebhauser. Anthony Beltoise needs to be there to pounce on it. But at the moment, Jens Liebhauser is an iron wall. He is just keeping it nice and planted. He's not overdriving the car. He's not going too long into the braking zones. He's keeping it perfectly planted for the moment. And there's a lot of frustration starting to vent forward from Anthony Beltoise. But there's nothing Liebhauser's doing wrong. He's doing it perfectly.
He hasn't been intimidated by Anthony Beltoise either. The issue would have been in the first couple of laps, having somebody breathing down your neck like that when the car is cold could force a problem, could force mistakes. Now, 20 minutes into the race, he's quite happy with the fact that Beltoise is there. He knows he's got a car underneath him that is equal to the Audi, and therefore we're going to see less opportunity for mistakes unless the pressure continues to build. But it doesn't feel like Anthony Beltoise is close enough for pressure to be a thing, as we now have our pit window open, and so some of our AM drivers will potentially come in, but don't expect our pro drivers to come in anytime soon. The end of the window is when they would probably change into their second driver.
So the top 6 cars have all gone through without taking advantage of the early pit window. In fact, everybody so far has come through without pitting. So we're not going to get an early stop. We could get an early-ish stop if they come in on this lap, of course. But Jens Liebhauser, why is there any percentage in him pitting at the moment? He's in a good rhythm. He's settled in with the car. Leave it as long as you can, essentially. He's doing a fine job keeping Anthony Beltoise at bay. And they've got a great chance of a podium here, haven't they? Because Rossiner up in front is 6 seconds in front of Liebhauser, but he's got to take 5 seconds penalty added to his pit stop for cutting the chicane initially, so that leaves them vulnerable.
And he is also one of our drivers that needs to have a further 5 seconds as compensation time after the results of race 1. So 120 seconds is the full pit stop time, so that's 2 minutes. And then True Racing's number 15 has 5 seconds extra, plus the 5-second penalty, so that's 10 seconds extra. And then the 2 LP Racing cars are the 88 that is retired on the side of the road, so we won't see that, but the 67, Anthony Beltoise, having 1 Pro-Am, has 10 seconds extra, so the same as the number 15. And then in the AM category, we've got Jans Krabek, who will have 14 seconds added to his time, and one of the other Ebby Motors cars, because we haven't got 2, have we?
We've only got Montesiano Vicious.
Yeah, and he's got 5 seconds added to his time.
Well, Jan Krabek has actually got a good run here on Christophe Brewer, who's indicating to the right-hand side. So Christophe Brewer, I think, is trying to communicate to Jan Krabek, I'm coming in.
Well, maybe, yeah. Maybe he is saying I'm going to the pits.
So don't race with me, just hang back a little bit more. There you go, he is coming in.
Oh, very polite.
He was almost on the highway there, wasn't he?
Saying, if it was a track day, then that's what it would be. If it's a race, usually it's because you've just banged it by mistake.
Well, the thing is, Christophe Brewer had such a short race yesterday. I think he wants to make sure that he gets to the end of the race, so he's taking every precaution possible. Peter Gillich, now this is going to be an interesting mystery answered, isn't it? Because we didn't really get to see his best yesterday. So hopefully we'll get to today when he gets into the car and Steen Longin hands it over to him. Christophe Brewer, of course, he doesn't get out of the car because he's got... Oh, no, he does get out of the car.
Yeah, so, because you had to yesterday. But they did have the fuel bowser on the car before he got out. And I'm not quite sure whether that is... Certainly in some championships, that's not allowed. You have to be free of the car before you start fueling. Not sure about this particular rule set.
Well, Pierre Caffer is out in front, and he has extended the gap to 6.8 seconds on the previous lap, so looking very neat and tidy. Lapping relatively calmly at the moment, about half a second to 9/10 of a second per sector down on his best, but his best is pretty darn quick. No pressure, Peter. This is obviously going to be a chance to go for the win, and he knows it, as out onto the circuit goes Luciano Privitello, having taken over from Donovan.
Other way around.
Oh, other way. No, yes, you're right. It should be the other way round.
Yeah, so Dad Privitello was starting the race. And again, we didn't see too much of son Privitello yesterday because he had damage. Now, from the very tail of the field, with potentially clear track ahead of him, yeah, look at that. He's got some serious work to do. Thanks, Dad.
Well, that could be very interesting, couldn't it, to see how much time he makes up. They go through the top 3 drivers. They do not come through to take a pit stop. So they will do so one more time. Christophe Brewer still in the pits, of course. Don't panic, because, of course, he will obviously gain that time back again when the others pit. In comes Jens Liebhauser. What an admirable effort that was to keep Liebhauser, to keep Anthony Beltoise at bay for as long as he did.
Now, interestingly, coming into the pits, he's already changed his driver ID. So on our timing screens, it looks as though Thomas Jackemeyer is already in that car because they have a switch in the car and they switch it from driver 1 to driver 2. Usually it's the driver getting in that does the switching, but in that team they've decided it's the driver getting out that does the switching, hopefully. Otherwise Thomas Jackemeyer is going to go in and switch it back to the other driver. Because usually it doesn't say their name, it's like driver 1, driver 2. So.
Maybe it's just giving Thomas one less thing to think about getting into the car, absolutely, because he's got quite a bit to focus on when he's on track already. So there is the number 44, Fanatec by HRT Mercedes GT2 car. And now that Thomas Jackemeyer is going to get behind the wheel, we'll see the same brilliant racing that we saw from him yesterday as they top up the fuel.
That's a great, actually, with the driver's foot there. It's a great example of what he was telling me last night, how high that car is now. You probably could get your whole foot flat underneath the car. Obviously, the idea in any racing car is to run at least the front end of it as low as possible to create a vortex effect under the car and suck it to the ground. But if the regulations say you can't, then you can't. And the regulations say for that Mercedes, it has to be pretty high.
So the pit window is open a little bit longer, but not that much longer.
About halfway through the window, aren't we? It's from 30 to 20 minutes. So I reckon Pierre Caffer could do another 2 laps.
You've got to be very careful when you play with that pit window open, though, because, of course, if there is a safety car that triggers at the end of that point,
Yep.
You start flirting with, you know, am I going to come in too late because of how slow the in-lap's going to be? So you've got to be careful with that. As into the pits comes Stefan Rossiner. Now we know that that car is going to be in the pits for a total of 10 seconds longer than normal because they had a 5-second penalty for dropping it in the first chicane, and then they had a 5-second success penalty coming into this one from yesterday. There is Tommy Jakemeyer getting his way further forward. So Thomas gets his way to the first chicane. Out of the car gets Stefan Rossiner. In gets Nicholas Salens.
No one's been particularly close to the that mandatory window. Like we saw yesterday. In GT4, you get people going under it and sometimes too much under it. In GT2s, you've got to do the fueling. You've got to get your driver out, driver in. And so Jakemeyer giving 8 seconds away to the pits. Privatello giving 4 seconds away to the pits. Brewer, despite being the only driver in that car, 14 seconds given away unnecessarily. So, you know, 14 seconds is pretty hard to get back once you're back on track.
The other KTM that's in the pits at the moment is Klaus Angerhofer in the True Racing KTM. So far, looking good, but obviously very, very tricky. And that's the other car that's obviously in the pits with it. So the two KTM crossbows. Fascinating that underneath all that is the original KTM crossbow car. And essentially this is a body shell with a few extra tweaks to make this car a GT2. But it is an exceptionally cool car.
Now, so Caffer is caught up with Privatello. This is effectively to lap the Lamborghini, but I'm not sure Privatello will want to back out of it, knowing that ultimately once he gets up to speed, he shouldn't be losing too much time. But blue flags are flying, so in theory he needs to get out of the way because Caffer just needs to keep pounding in those laps and try and create as much of a buffer for his teammate for when they change around. It's going to be the end of this lap that he'll come in and make his pit stop, and Longy doing the same thing.
Yep, so Beltoise and Krebech both come into the pits. So Beltoise will hand over to Henry Hassid, and Krebech will get out of the car, but obviously he won't change driver. What happened there?
We've got a bit of an issue for the 15. Their pit stop not only has been too short, 1:58.3, their pit stop should have been, with the 2 penalties, the compensation time, which was 5 seconds, and then their drive-through penalty of 5 seconds, that should have been a 2:10. So I'm afraid, I think the number 15 car of Nicholas Salens now aboard is going to get another penalty.
That's very difficult indeed, and that's not what they needed. Meanwhile, Jan Krebech out of the car and back in again, because obviously he's not changing driver. But if you're not changing driver, you still have to get out of the car and get back in again so that you still do the taking off of seatbelts and putting the seatbelts back on again.
I think it's less that and more the safety issue of refueling and having a driver in the car whilst you're refueling, I believe, because ultimately you've got a minimum pit stop window. So 120 seconds should be easy to do everything.
Mantas Janavicius has brought the Ebbe Motors Porsche back into the pits as well. So an interesting run for Jakemeyer, trying to hold on in front of the KTM. Jakemeyer's going to lose out here to Angerhofer. Nicely done from Angerhofer. He has really worked his craft further forward. And into the pits comes Pierre Caffer. Right, here we go. Race leader comes in, and Steen Longin surely will be coming into the pits right behind him. And there you go. That is the pit window complete, because everybody has now done their pit window. In fact, Pierre Caffer and Steen Longin managed to get in with about 27 seconds to spare. Talk about leaving it tight. So out onto the pit lane gets Steen Longin, and he hands the car over to Peter Gillinch. Out onto the circuit goes Mantas Janavicius, and has he got back out onto the circuit right in front of Henry Hassid? He has. He's leapfrogged him. So well done to the Ebbe Motors Porsche crew. They have jumped ahead of the LP Racing Audi.
Yes, but their pit stop time is also a second and a half quicker than it should be.
Right, that's something they've obviously got to concern themselves with, but Henry Hassid doesn't mind about that. He's just going to drive right around the outside of the Ebbe Motors Porsche anyway. What a fighting start that is for Henry Hassid. They lose out to the Ebbe Motors Porsche, but Henry Hassid says, oh, it doesn't matter. I'll just go right around the outside of the Curva Grande. I'll pick him off. Right, who's next?
Yeah, that Ebbe Motors car, a 1:55.8 for their pit stop time. They should have done it in a 2 minutes and 5, because they had a compensation time added as well. So might be seeing a few more penalties coming in. The Audis never had any Bowsers attached to their cars, so they were not refueling. I wonder if the KTMs were attaching the Bowsers to kind of get rid of air from the fuel tanks rather than actually putting fuel in. They were just trying to, yeah, interesting.
We've had the actual pit stop for Reinhard Koffler. It's his second visit to the pits, but of course the first one was a drive-through penalty. So now Reinhard Koffler, they're having their actual pit stop. And out onto the circuit, Michael Doppelmayr takes the lead. Peter Gillich takes second, and in the background, who's that bearing down on them? I believe that is Nicholas Salins, who unfortunately may well be getting an investigation into their pit stop time. We'll have a look at that later, but certainly for the moment, Nicholas Salins has come through, and into third position goes the number 15 KTM. So as they work their way through in the Retifilio, this is now going to be a really interesting duel between Doppelmayr, Gillich and Salins as we look at Reinhard Koffler in the pit lane in the number 17, changing over to Trunkenholz.
Yeah, we saw yesterday Reinhard very much getting to grips with the pace of this car.
Oh, this is Brewer versus Jackemeyer. Jackemeyer might just lose out on the exit here. There goes Krebech as well. Oh, it's tricky, just gets on the grass a little bit. Not so easy when you've got two cars bearing down in your six. And unfortunately, he loses out to both men.
Got squeezed a little bit on the exit there. As the way the circuit kind of slightly bends as well. Krebech was holding a straight line, but the circuit kind of disappeared up for Jackemeyer, and he had to get out of that.
Oh, look at Restecker. The back end of the Ebbe Motors Porsche slid violently there through Lesmo 1. So up on the inside comes Angerhofer, making the move on the inside. That was bold, and Restecker, well, I don't even think he realised that Angerhofer was going to go for it.
A little bit of surprise that he turned in and then found the KTM there, had to turn out of it, and then there was no circuit left.
Absolutely. Where did you come from? Dived up on the inside line. Nicely done by Angerhofer, but poor Restecker, I don't even think he knew that was on. So behind you've got Brewer and Krebech. They've been in the car since the start, so their battle renews. Jackemeyer holding on in 9th position, obviously still trying to get the tyres up to temperature. Trunkenpolz is down to 10th position now. Privitello is still there in 11th place, but obviously has now got to do rather a lot amount of work to accelerate and close up. Look at Krebech putting Brewer under pressure. So Krebech trying to get himself back into the second position that he fought for yesterday. He's got a good run off of the final turn, and now he'll use the slipstream of Christoph Brewer. Brewer trying to hold on to this as they go down the main straight up towards the Retifilio. Now, which way is Christoph Brewer going to send Krebech? Will he send him to the inside? Will he send him to the outside? He's going to go for the conventional route. Krebech is going to brake late into the Retifilio. Little bit of curb. Nicely done.
I mean, Brewer's not new to this car as well. You know, he's been in that car since the start of the race. This is not a second driver getting up to speed. This is maybe fatigue starting to set in. Of course, we didn't see Christoph do the full race yesterday, but he has kind of slightly been bullied over the last couple of laps.
I wonder if there's still a tiny bit of lingering lack of confidence in the car after retiring yesterday, because they did have to make some repairs to that car, of course.
Yeah, he got a clunk on the rear suspension, didn't he?
And Jan Krebech diving in. Gets a little bit tight on the apex of the first part of the Retifilio, but tidies it up nicely on the exit. Sorts himself out nicely for the left-hander. And Christoph Brewer just has to let him go on that occasion.
Now, one of the things we heard from yesterday, and it wasn't as warm as it is today, was how the tyres really went off at the end of the race. We've got AM drivers dealing with that situation rather than the pros. I wonder how much the pro drivers at the start of the race, or even the likes of Jan Krebech, gave themselves a bit of a margin, didn't push too hard, knowing that they wanted to provide the best possible condition of tyres at the very end of the race. And if you've pushed too hard, like perhaps Christoph Brewer did, we saw a very good first stint, that the tyres will start going away from him in the second half of the race. You know, a 150.2 was his best lap of the race so far. That last lap was 2 seconds slower. He was really kind of pushed about.
Now, this is the race we've been waiting for since the start. We said it was going to tighten up, and it definitely is in the top three. Doppelmayr is really under some pressure now from Peter Gillich. Peter Gillich is going to try his best to go for the move into the Variante della Roscia. He's already tightened up. Doppelmayer's got to move to defend. Peter Gillich waiting for the chance, and here comes Nicholas Salens, hopefully trying to get his own move. This is fantastic. 3 cars battling for the victory, 2 Audis in the KTM, and now Doppelmayr is having to go defensive to keep Gillich and Salens at bay.
Well, Doppelmayr and Salens were quite early on the brakes, and Gillich was quite early on the brakes. Salens was on the brakes as he would usually be, and so closed in massively, and that's not what Peter Gillich wanted, because he's going to have to look behind as well as ahead. But even just coming out of Lesmos, he's got better speed.
So Doppelmayr is going to lose out to Gillich, but Salens might get them both. They're going to go 3 wide on the run, nearly to Variante Ascari. Oh, goodness me. Doppelmayr decides to bail out for the time being, and Salens gets in a second position behind Gillich. But can the KTM go for the win? Because Peter Gillich manages to get the move on Doppelmayr, but can Salens get the move on Gillich now? What a battle this is going to be.
Yeah, what pace has Gillich got without having Doppelmayr ahead of him? How much was he being held back? Doppelmayr did a 54 the last lap. Gillich did a 51, but Salens did a 50.8. So Salens was only a second faster on the last lap. But now Gillich doesn't have anybody ahead of him, so maybe we can see an improvement in time.
I'm afraid this isn't over yet, Ben. Your prediction was right. The 15 car is under investigation for a pit lane infringement, as is the number 5 Evan Motors Porsche, as is the number 17 True Racing KTM.
Yep.
So 3 cars under investigation now.
2 of which I understand, because I called it. The 17 did a pit stop in 2 minutes and 11 seconds and didn't have any compensation time that they were supposed to take. So I would have thought that one was okay, but maybe race controller looking at it, because of course that's the car that had a drive-through penalty as well earlier in the race, and so maybe what I'm seeing on the timing screen is incorrect, but race controller looking at it.
It's a different pit stop infringement potentially, so it isn't specific about the reason why. And as you can see, Peter Gillich and Nicholas Salens having a great little scrap at the moment. Salens just waiting for his opportunity to go for it. He's got time, that's the thing. You don't want to rush this. There's 12 minutes to go, and as long as you can follow quite closely to the Audi in front, which is what he's obviously trying to do. He's matched him in sector 1 almost to the 100th of a second there. But if you can just follow Peter Gillich, can analyse what he's doing, figure out where the Audi is vulnerable, figure out where his own KTM has got a little bit of an advantage. He can sort of analyse where to put the car, how to catch up to the back of him again, and take his time about it. We've got 11.5 minutes. That's a good 4 laps at least. So he's got plenty of time to read this.
Now, if it becomes a time penalty for this pit stop infringement, then it's going to be a penalty of about 12 seconds for the 15 Salens car. If he wants to win, therefore, not only does he need to pass the number 1, but he needs to build that advantage so that when race control give the penalty, it doesn't hurt him too much.
And this is where, obviously, the tyre wear and the tyre degradation really becomes a factor, because you're into the last 11 minutes of the race now, and these AM drivers are really going to struggle. They won't be in the same situation they were in last time. Yesterday, they obviously had fresh tyres at the start of a race. Now they have got worn tyres at the end of a race, and this is going to be very tricky indeed to compensate for. Gillich, of course, didn't get the chance even to have the fresh tyres for long in race 1, so this is still really coping with the situation on the job, as Nicholas Salens is still within 0.6 of a second of the man in front. Trying an alternative line, just trying to figure out what the Audi is doing, trying to place the car as best as possible. Salens going a little bit more aggressive into the braking zone, and this might be the opportunity coming off of the Variante della Roccia. We may get the chance here. Salens is going to have a look into the first Lesmo. He bails out of it. So Salens still hunting down and pressurising Gillich the whole way. Salens trying his best to get the KTM through the second Lesmo. Back on the acceleration, up the straight, up towards the Monza-Napolis banking. They'll go under that. And then they will come to the braking zone again for the Variante Ascari. And this is where Gillich really needs to time this right. Salens is going to put him under so much pressure. Down to the braking zone again, a little bit of travel on the brakes for the KTM. However, there's enough grip in the car still to correct it for the Variante Ascari. But this is even Stevens really between the cars, isn't it?
Well, it's ebbing and flowing massively. One part of the lap, there's almost a second difference between them, and then another part of the lap, they're on top of each other. It's amazing to see how the 2 cars and the 2 drivers are performing completely different levels in the, whoa, big wiggle there in the KTM. Almost locked up the rears there under braking.
That's the first real error from Nicholas Salins in this race. They are pushing very hard to try and match each other, but again, 9 minutes on the clock. That won't have cost him too much. In fact, as he comes across the line, it's only 0.7 of a second, so they kind of almost made the same mistake through there, so it's very even between these two. Down to the Rettifilio again. Nicholas Salins just very close to the grass, manages to keep it off it. But again, look at the acceleration difference between these two. The KTM does seem to have a little bit better purchase off the turn itself. The Audi, once the acceleration kicks in, it then has a little bit more grunt, but this is going to be a battle of wills all the way to the flag between these two. Down to the braking zone for the Della Roggia.
He's so much better on the brakes. The KTM closing up massively under braking.
But then you get back on the power, and the Audi is just the match for the KTM behind. Taking it through the first Lesmo. Got to get a little bit closer to the Audi if you want that run. Look at the sweat starting to pour on the drivers on the sidelines here. There is the KTM, still close, but not close enough on this lap to challenge into the Variante Ascari.
No, but out of it, he seems to be a lot closer, doesn't he? Had a really good opportunity last time at the Parabolica.
So now through the left, right, left of the Variante Ascari complex. Just keep it tidy, and this is the problem. Every lap, it's going to be harder to keep it tidy because those tyres are going to start screaming at the driver, come on, give me a little bit more.
Yeah, but don't forget that the 15 got some kind of penalty, a penalty we don't know. Oh, there's potentially a change for third as well, side by side with Doppelmayr and Henri Acid. That's closed down pretty quickly, hasn't it? Acid was 4 seconds a lap faster on the last lap. He's on the right-hand side and takes third position and onto the podium.
It's a good effort there from Doppelmayr, but Acid had the position nailed before they even got to the braking zone. Angerhofer and Krebech are still trying their best to make progress. Salins was only 0.3 of a second back from Gillinch as they came across the line, and now he's going to commit to the move. Up on the inside line, brakes late, turns in, done.
Nice, but the Audi's better at other parts of the circuit, remember, so it won't be deal done yet. And of course, Salins has this penalty hanging over him. We don't know what it is yet. He'd love to know how much does he need to push? Does he need to try and create a gap?
It's certainly an investigation at the moment. We don't know if there is an actual penalty given, but certainly that'll be at the back of the team's mind.
Oh, it's a slam dunk, Jake. They didn't take the penalty that they were given for the contact at the start of the race. They didn't take the compensation time, and they were under the time of the pit stop generally. So they've got something coming, they just don't know what it is yet. Well,
0.3 of a second behind is Peter Gillinch, and he just knows from his point of view, the team will probably be telling him the same thing. They'll probably be telling him, look, the guys in front have got a penalty. They don't know they've got a penalty because they've done the math themselves and thought, well, we know what we think we know. So don't panic about this. Sit in second position and just follow as close as possible, and the win will come to you organically. So looking in the background, we should see Henri Acid coming into shot. There he is, third position in the LP Racing Audi. The second car is there. And in fifth position, we've got Angerhofer and Krebech bearing down on Doppelmayr as well. Angerhofer currently in the lead of the AM category, so it looks like we could get potentially, certainly at the moment, provisionally, we're going to get a double KTM victory, but if the leading KTM does end up having a penalty, they're going to have to try and hang on for the victory in this one. But Brewer there in third position in the background. They seem to have at least one of the KTMs is going to get the AM victory. As up the inside comes Angerhofer on Doppelmayr, and the gap is left firmly wide open for Jan Krebech to get through as well.
Remember, it's Krebech who took the victory yesterday, and Angerhofer who spent the second half of the race facing the wrong direction. Remember, he had 2 spins, really struggled with the car on the second half of the race. Both these drivers doing the full 50 minutes as well. But Klaus, a multiple KTM champion. Krebech, this is his first weekend back racing for 2 years.
He clearly hasn't lost any of his speed at all, has he? Yesterday, he was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Second position overall, never mind in the AM category. So now he's got another shot at it. He knows that the win is on. He's got 4 minutes 40 to get back past Angerhofer. And again, all he's got to do is be patient. He's just got to read the situation as well as he can.
And interestingly, these two and Henri Acid are both faster than our front two. Salins and Gillinch slower on that last lap, and the fastest guy was Henri Acid, despite the need to get past Doppelmayr.
And looking at the time we've got left, I mean, it's going to be marginal for Gillinch, but he might just be able to hang on in front of Henry Hesseed. So it's going to be tight, isn't it? It's not over yet by any stretch. 4 minutes to go, but there is definitely going to be a potential last-minute change around. Car number 8, black and white flag for track limits. That is going to be Donovan Privitello in the Lamborghini. So the Iron Nix Lamborghini of Donovan Privitello has been given the warning flag for not respecting track limits. There's only a second still between Salins and Gillinch. I don't think Gillinch wants to win this race in the stewards' room. He wants to win it on the track, and he's going to try again as Grabech is hustling Angerhofer into the final corner. They come off the turn. Has he hustled Angerhofer enough to put him wide? I think he has. So Grabech is going to get the run down towards the Rettifilio chicane again. Watch for Jan Grabech, who's going to give Angerhofer a real run for his money down the main straight. Angerhofer's got to hold the lead here. Grabech will follow in the slipstream. Pops out to the left, because that's where Angerhofer sends him. Onto the brakes. There's going to be a bit of a charge between the two of them. Grabech is standing round the outside. Oh, brilliant from Jan Grabech. Now he's going to try and shake off Angerhofer on the exit of the Rettifilio, and he's done it. Jan Grabech takes the lead in the AM category. Beautifully handled. So Grabech has got through, and there is confirmation. Nicholas Salins, stop and go penalty converted into 46 seconds added to the end of the race time. That is going to drop them behind Jakemeyer.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's a big penalty, isn't it?
Bearing in mind it was only 12 seconds over, I suppose what they're looking at, race control, is saying, well, that's a drive-through penalty plus the time that you were over, and therefore that equates to 46 seconds.
Well, I'm afraid that means that there is no KTM victory coming the way in the Pro-Am category, is there?
It'll also put Doppelmayr on the podium.
It will indeed. So Doppelmayr is going to be on the Pro-Am podium. That is great news. Trunkenpolz has dropped a lap down. So, yeah, Doppelmayr is going to get third in Pro-Am. He's going to be delighted with that. There it is, 46 seconds added at the end to the race-leading car. Nicholas Salins in the True Racing KTM. A pit stop infringement that is converted to 46 seconds added to the race time. Such a disappointment that's going to be for them. What a shame. Nicholas Salins drove beautifully too. So did his teammate. But unfortunately, in the pits, it has all unraveled.
And I think the reason why that's so strong is because within that was a penalty for the contact at the start of the race. So effectively, they haven't served a driving infringement penalty. Whereas I think if it was just a miscalculation on pit stop time, it might have been a bit less serious, because if we look at the number 5, who's just had their penalty applied, it's only 16 seconds.
Right, yes, they have had a 16-second time penalty added to the number 5, and we were confused as to why a time penalty could be coming the way of the 17 car. We now know the reason. They were a little late into the pits. They stopped outside the pit stop window by a few seconds. Now, we did say, didn't we, that the first 2 cars that came in, the Doppelmayr Audi and the Gillinch Audi, they had left it late by about 25 seconds. Unfortunately, the KTM came in on the same lap, but they were a few seconds back, so they miscalculated.
Makes sense.
Unfortunately,
actually, it was their pit stop out, so they were in the pits when the pits are shut.
Oh dear.
So they hadn't been able to serve the pit stop within the window, and it's not when you go in, it's actually when you go out.
Well, we're on the final lap, as we know, because the time is going to tick down before they get to the finish line. So although Nicholas Salins is going to cross the line in first position, 46 seconds will be added to the time. So we're actually looking at the number 1 PK Car Sport Audi to win this race provisionally. Salins will come through ahead of him. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they will come out of the final turn. The KTM from True Racing will cross the line first, but they will get a penalty added to their time. So it's going to be the PK Car Sport Audi that will take the victory, with Steen Longin and Peter Gillinch after their miserable race that only lasted a few hundred yards yesterday. Now they get to come through. Jan Grabech comes through in what will be 3rd overall, and with the victory in the AM category, having taken it off Klaus Angerhofer. A great result. Steen Longin knows that after the misery of yesterday, they now come through for the win today. Unfortunate for the True Racing team, that 46 seconds added to their time is going to drop them back behind Thomas Jackemeyer, I do believe, in the Mercedes. But what a fabulous charge through after the disappointment of Saturday. Sunday is much better for the PK Carsport Audi crew. Great to see Steen Longin and Peter Gillinch will come through for the victory. There you see the penalty is now added to the timing screen of Nicholas Salins, and they will drop all the way back to 8th position in the end. But there are your provisional winners, Peter Gillinch and Steen Longin. Great job, consistent, smooth, disciplined, exactly as you need to be.
We now know that that #1 car is a force to be reckoned with across the rest of the season. Good combination in Pro-Am.
Yeah, and that's obviously what they need to take going into the second weekend of the championship. They know now they've got good pace. Unfortunate that they couldn't show it in race 1. But now they've definitely turned their fortunes around this weekend. And as far as they're concerned, the title battle in Fanatec GT2 European Series starts here.
Well, yeah, defense of the title for Henri Acide as well.
So it's Audi 1-2, PK Carsport in front of LP Racing. And in third position, the RTR Projects KTM gets another AM victory, third overall this time instead of second. The True Racing KTM in second in class, and the Manthe Porsche makes it to the end and gets a podium. Much better for Christoph Brewer. They'll be very happy indeed with that. Michael Doppelmayr picks up a Pro-Am podium alongside Pierre Caffer in 6th position overall. Then Jackemeyer and Liebhauser, Salins and Rossiner with that penalty applied, drops to 8th place, I'm afraid. And then Restecker and Janavicius in 9th in the Ebbe Motors Porsche. And then the Lamborghini from Iron Links and the Privatellios, Donovan and Luciano. A lap down were Koffer and Tronkenpolz. And then obviously Mattia De Gusto ended up out of the race on the first corner. Very unfortunate. We didn't get to see Stefan Rattel behind the wheel, but Mattia De Gusto, a very short-lived race. Very unfortunate. I have a feeling that the LP Racing Audi could have had a chance of the podium overall, never mind in class. But Gillinch comes into the pits. He would have been a little bit sheepish after yesterday. Today, he can soak in the jubilation. And there has been a correction post-race. The 15 has actually been given a 51-second stop-and-go penalty. They've had another 5 seconds added post-race.
So race control must have forgotten one of those 5 seconds that was supposed to be added.
I guess so.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's a big penalty. But there's the celebration. PK Carsport Audi, #1 in P1. What a way to finish the weekend in the Fanatec GT2 European Series for these two. A great result and fabulous work from Peter and Steen. They absolutely deserve the victory, a very smooth race performance. So let's hear from them. Gemma Scott is down there in pit lane to speak to our winners, Peter and Steen.
Lads, congratulations. That was a sterling effort. It wasn't an easy race at all. A lot of pressure on, but certainly pulling through for that win.
Yeah, it feels really good to win. First European weekend with Peter now, and getting a win, yeah, I'm really happy. But yeah, it was not an easy race. We struggled a bit with tire pressures, and also there was a small shifting problem in the beginning, in the first stint. So it was not easy, but at the end we are a good driver's duo. So yeah, really happy, and Peter did a fantastic job.
Absolutely. We spoke to your father earlier and he said to me, you never get used to winning, that feeling.
It's true.
It's a great feeling.
Definitely not. It was a great stint. Yeah, like Stina said, we had some shifting problems, but in the end it was just keeping the pace, and the car felt really good after the crash we had yesterday, so very happy. And no, you never get used to winning.
Go and enjoy it. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the right attitude to have. Never get used to victory. That way you can be pleasantly and amiably surprised when it happens. But what a fabulous result that was, and a great drive from both Steen Longin and Peter Gillinch. They were very evenly paced amongst the pair of them over the course of the race, and we certainly had some good duels from them in the battle for the win. We're also going to hear from Jan Krabec, the RTR Projects KTM driver, who came through to take the AM victory. He was second overall yesterday. He gets third overall today, but it's the AM win. He'll catch up with Gemma Scott.
Long weekend.
Yeah, and it's been a busy weekend.
For a single driver, yeah.
Very tired now, I know you are. But what a great drive that was, and a fantastic class win for you.
Thank you. I really have no words because I didn't really get ready for the second podium this weekend. A very long one. I was a single driver, so I'm really exhausted, but it was fun.
But hey, like, this is the second one. You know the way to the podium now.
Thank you. Well, yeah, the second time will be easier.
Congratulations. Well done, Jan.
Thank you.
He seems absolutely blown away by what he's done this weekend, but now that we know what he did in race 1, we knew that something similar was coming in race 2. Don't be so hard on yourself, Jan. You're world class. What a brilliant performance. 2nd overall yesterday, 3rd overall today, double AM winner. There's the move he pulled on Klaus Angerhofer to get the move done. And that was very well tidied up on the exit. Could easily have lost that to Klaus Angerhofer, but made sure on the exit, no, I'm holding on to this. That was very well handled indeed. So another terrific race battle in the Fanatec GT2 European Series. They gave us so much entertainment yesterday. They did so again today. Race 2 of the Fanatec GT2 European Series at Monza. A cracking start right from the outset. Estine Longin and Pierre Caffer battle their way to the first corner. We'll never know just how strong Mattia De Gusto could have been in the Audi, as unfortunately trying to make the move up to the first corner, he got squeezed, and unfortunately his race was over there and then. There were battles galore between the KTMs as they swapped positions in the early stages and raced for supremacy. But it would transpire that there would be some penalties to come the way of the KTMs over the course of the race. Meanwhile, Caffer versus Longin continued to give us plenty of excitement. Pierre Caffer finally slipping the car into the lead for the time being and holding it through to the pit stop window. But then obviously, once the pit stop started to come in, things started to change around a bit. Pierre Caffer would hand over the car to Michael Doppelmayr. Steve Longin would hand the car over to Peter Gillich, and the battle would resume. Gillich got his move on Doppelmayr and took Nicholas Salins in the KTM along for the ride. A brilliant 3-wide battle, and Doppelmayr decided to give best. He would hang on for a Pro-Am podium in the end. Sadly, Nicholas Salins would eventually take the lead and only lose it again later, as a pit stop infringement penalty would come the way of the KTM. The move itself was spectacular enough. Unfortunate then that he was unable to keep the victory. Keeping it together in the PK Carsport Audi, second on the road, it was a brilliant victory in the end for Longin and for Peter Gillich. Unfortunate that the KTM would lose ground, but it's a win for Kravetsch in the AM and a win for PK Carsport in the Pro-Am category. Fabulous performance in the Fanatec GT2 European Series, second race of the weekend here at Monza. And a fabulous display. Monza really has been entertaining for these guys. They've given us a lot to talk about. And Fanatec GT2 is going to be sensational in 2023. Hope you've enjoyed the action from Monza. There'll be more action from them next time. From Ben Constanduris, Gemma Scott and Jake Sanson, thanks very much for being with us. See you next time.